Welcome and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join the Silver Fox Advisors for our fourth virtual Lunch and Learn webinar in 2021. My name is Joseph Tung, and I'm honored to serve as the chair of the Education Committee with my two vice chairs, Henry Florsheim and George Connolly. Our committee consists of over 20 Silver Fox advisors. I've been a practicing attorney in Houston for nearly 20 years, having joined the law firm of Grable Martin Fulton as director of the new Houston office in September 2020. There are a few housekeeping matters I want to address first. This is a webinar format, so you will only be able to see the panelists, and you can control the viewing options by going to the top, the menu on the top of your screen, and control the screen ratio, side-by-side view, or the traditional view. We will have a Q&A period at the end where you can ask questions in the chat box or use the Q&A button. I will be your moderator. And finally, there will be polling questions and a survey at the end. We appreciate your input. I'm a proud member of the Silver Fox Advisors, which is a group of experienced business leaders that advises, consults, and mentors the Houston business community since 1986. Our goal is to empower business owners to become successful, and we're excited to celebrate our 35th anniversary in 2021. Our leadership council is made up of our president, Donnie Roberts, vice president, Doug Thorpe, and chairman, Bill Herman, along with 6 committees that include business engagement, education, organization outreach, operating, membership, and marketing. I'm proud to work alongside Mary Cole, Rainey Busby, Henry Florsheim, George Connolly, Gerald Murfish, Rich Hall, Lane Sloan, David Newberger, Gary Henderson, and Gordon Arnold. I also want to give special thanks to Lynn Rosado, who has been the administrative rock and foundation of our organization, and who also is controlling the slides. Our organization supports 20 CEO roundtables for nearly 200 CEOs across the greater Houston area that typically meet once a month physically. But with COVID-19, many of our roundtables have pivoted into meeting virtually more frequently or as needed. These roundtables are complimentary to join and provide valuable peer support during this critical time. We also provide these virtual Lunch and Learn programs and our education series webinars free of charge. The Silver Fox Advisors also provides individual advisory board and professional services on a fee basis. If you're interested in any of these offerings, you can find out more information on our website, www.silverfox.org. I want to take time to thank our in-kind sponsors, Griffin & Company and Pierpont. Jim Griffin and Phil Morabito have decades of experience with the Silver Foxes and provide outstanding accounting and marketing services. We encourage you to check out their websites and social media presence for these 2 great award-winning companies. It's my pleasure to now introduce our presenters. Today, we're getting a 2-for-1 special as Julian Aldridge will be joining his wife, Karen. Julian founded the Enact Agency in 2010 to help brands of all shapes, sizes, and colors discover, articulate, and bring to life their challenger DNA. Over his 30 years in the advertising and marketing industry, he's worked with iconic brands like Nike, DHL, Miller, Adidas, Coke, and Disney. Karen Noseff Aldridge and I have been friends for 20 years since we first met in law school. Karen is the founder and president of Rebel Athletic, which she started in 2013. It's focused on designing and selling custom couture cheerleading uniforms in the all-star competitive cheer industry. Rebel Athletic Apparel is featured in the Netflix mega hit documentary Cheer, which chronicles Corsicana's Navarro College Bulldog squad as they prepare for the National Cheerleading Championships. Karen was a featured cover story in Inc. magazine's March 2016 issue, the 2019 recipient of Tech Titans Technology Adopter Award, and recently named by Ernst & Young as the 2020 Entrepreneur of the Year for the U.S. Southwest region. More than 70% of Rebel's employees and their executive team are women, and their clients include some of the world's biggest cheerleading squads, such as Canada's 1,200-member Cheer Sports Sharks, as well as professional teams like the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders. It is my honor and pleasure to welcome Julian and Karen Aldridge.
Hi, guys. Thank you, Joe, for that great introduction. So I'm going to start quick little recap on who I am and what Rebel Athletic is. I think Joe already mentioned, but I founded the company 2013 and started off making cheerleading uniforms. And since then, we have branched out into other products for cheerleaders, shoes, bags, and we have a retail division too now that services teen and tween girls and women who love to sparkle. And we have over 4,000 gyms throughout the US and internationally that we outfit, as well as schools, youth leagues, anything from Pop Warner all the way up to high school, NBA, NHL, and NFL teams. Okay, lunch crasher story. I was actually teaching. So Joe mentioned he and I were in law school together. So I realized very quickly in law school, probably after the first year, that I did not want to practice law. So out of law school, I founded a company with my law school study partner, a fashion company that sold luxury premium denim. And that line was actually doing really well. And we got into 300 boutiques in the US, just really hustling, selling things out of the back of my trunk, pulling up store to store. And that venture ended up failing during the recession. And I intended to bring it back to life when the economy recovered and people were into buying luxury goods again. But what happened was I had another opportunity kind of fall into my lap. So I was teaching dance classes in the DFW area, and I ended up crashing a lunch with one of my dance friends who knew this guy in cheerleading. And that cheerleading guy found out that I had some connections in China in terms of manufacturing, and he asked me to produce 2,000 jackets for him. I literally crashed this lunch. I have no idea why. I've never done anything like that before since. But I showed up, met this guy, and he gave me an order of 2,000 jackets. The jackets were for the event, the cheerleading and dance event. So if you guys know anything about this cheer and dance, there's competitions that run year round all over the US. And the winners, these kids go, and if they win, they get a champion's jacket or a champion's ring. So he was asking me to manufacture these types of giveaway jackets for him for his cheer and dance events. And he was so happy with what we delivered that he started giving my phone number out to random people in the cheer industry who I didn't know who they were, but my phone started blowing up. People started ordering these jackets from me. And I did a little bit of research because this type of promotional product business, it's highly competitive. There's not a lot of margin in it. So I started doing some research just on the cheerleading industry. I had cheered as a kid, but really like traditional football sideline cheerleading. I didn't know much about club cheer or competitive cheer. And when I did the research, I found out that there was really one company that controlled all things cheer. And there was really one company that was producing cheerleading uniforms for all things cheer everywhere here and around the world. And when I saw their product, I got a hold of some samples. I felt like, okay, I don't know why I thought this, but I was like, I think if I study this, I think I can do this better than this huge company. Thinking back, it was crazy, but I managed to get some of their samples, got on a plane, went to China. And my Chinese is very 4th or 5th grade level. I mean, I can get by speaking conversational Chinese. And I found a factory and I said, try to make this. And I literally got ran out of the factory. I mean, the guy was cursing at me. He was like, I don't want to mess with this. This is too many moving parts because, the competition cheerleading uniform, it has like the tackle tool. It's got lots of cut lines, crystalling. And the way stuff looked back then was very, very simplistic compared to the level we've taken it to in the last, 7-8 years that we've been in business. I mean, we've pretty much transformed the cheer landscape in terms of the visual of how a cheerleading uniform is supposed to look. But back then, nobody in China would touch it because it's a mass production market. They want one unit of 10,000 units of something simple. So to make a long story short, that guy that ran me out of his factory is now our head of production in China, and we have our own facility, and we make very intricate things, and we don't do things. We set up a new way to produce in China. So I'm not going to get off on a tangent. I'm going to turn it over to Julian.
So what's fascinating about this story is if you look at where Rebel is now. Went from 3 employees in the corner of Karen's mother's office in Dallas to now well over 500, and from servicing a handful of accounts to people in over 20 countries, not even 200 countries in the world. So how do you do that? How do you go from a small startup to basically dominating the all-star cheer industry? Obviously through a lot of hard work and never giving in. And when somebody runs you out of a factory going, nope, I think you can help me. But principally by doing what every challenger does. And this is what we're going to spend the next half an hour or so talking about. Challengers zig when everybody else zags. When people are going one way, they go the other way. What does that mean, though? So that's what we're going to bring to life now. Basically, 5 challenger stories. Through each of these sections, Karen will tell a story about how this is applied and come to be for Rebel, and I'll talk through the theory. She's the practical one, I'm the sort of esoteric one in this particular little presentation we're going to do. So the first thing that every challenger does is they identify and they broadcast a belief. Now, a belief is something much bigger than just what your product or service does. And they do that not just to their existing customers or even prospective customers, but to the world far and wide. So Karen is now going to talk about exactly how Rebel really broke through with that belief at the outset of Rebel being, about 18 months old at that stage. You're on mute.
We came into the industry, wanting to level the playing field because there was only one viable option in cheerleading until we came in. That other option, which is our competitor, basically did whatever they wanted, set the prices, set the standards, very low, made late deliveries, made no apologies, because, when you don't have competition, you don't have to worry about that business going somewhere else. So this slide here is the Panther story. So really critical moment for us. I managed to talk the owner of Cheer Athletics, they are the largest, probably the largest and most prestigious award-winning competitive cheer gym in the world. They happen to be based in Plano, Texas, which is a 15-minute drive from where I live. And I convinced our first year in business, I drove up there and talked to the owner and said, hey, can we outfit one of your world champion teams, Panthers? They're super high profile in cheerleading. Everybody knows who they are. Can we outfit them for cheerleading worlds? We will do it for free. We had no marketing budget at the time. I mean, it was like we had $10,000 to spend, cost to make these uniforms. And we wanted to make an impact, and we wanted, we were a no-name brand. Nobody in cheerleading knew who we were, and we wanted to make an impact and do a marketing partnership with Cheer Athletics. For whatever reason, he agreed. And he said, I've never done this before, but, let's give it a shot. So we designed something you can see in the slide here, this Panthers uniform, and we put it on the athletes. We all went at the time, my team was less than 10 people. I think there were 7 or 8 of us. We all got on a plane. We went to Orlando to Cheerleading World so that we could sit in the audience and watch them come on stage in this thing. And that's what we did. And they came on stage, and within minutes of them leaving the stage, I was getting death threats on my phone via text, like anonymous text saying, you should die, you're a joke. It was horrible. And it almost broke our team because we went on like all the cheer chat boards at the time. Cheerleading is its own little community. It's got its own pages, chat boards, social media platforms, and everybody was just on there just canceling us, like before cancel culture even existed, like laughing, saying, you guys don't know what you're doing. Like just make it was almost borderline bullying, right? But we decided, we felt sorry for ourselves for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, went and sat at a restaurant and, said, hey, it's fine. People didn't like it. It is what it is. We can move on from this. And then we went home. And something magical happened the next week after we got home. People noticed this uniform, and over $600,000 in orders came in from just random places all over the United States, gym owners and coaches that had seen this uniform and liked how different it was, how polarizing it was. That for everybody that hated it, I guess there were people that liked it because the orders were flooding in. And I was in shock, but I was like, okay, this was a huge learning moment for us because we realized, okay, polarization is good. Don't be just in the middle where nobody's talking about you. When you're going to do something, do it big or go home. People are either going to love it or they're going to hate it, but they're going to talk about it. And it really worked for us. So we realized from that moment on, we had to set ourselves apart and we had to be polarizing in every action that we took.
And this was such a pivotal story for Rebel. We tell it at every brand conference where we get the team together, usually in person in January to really kick off the new year. And it was centered on this belief that Rebel had at the very outset and still has, that everyone deserves to compete on a level playing field. That, as Karen said, it shouldn't depend upon whether you have an in with a company or you happen to be judging for a competition. Everybody, every gym, large and small, deserves to compete in something spectacular. And this is what every challenger brand does. They have a strong belief in themselves, of course, but a belief in something much bigger. So throughout this presentation, I'm going to just very quickly, and you're welcome to have a look at any of these slides later on, go through 4 famous companies and show you their beliefs and other aspects of how they operate, with a hope that you can then translate these to what you do in your business. So what do Apple believe? Sure, they believe that great design helps and everybody should have a Mac on their desk. But much higher up, they believe that people with passion can change the world for the better. If you think back to the 1984 commercial, which is, I think, Adweek's most famous ever commercial, they believed that it takes people like that to change the world. And they wanted to help people do that through having a Mac. Nike believe in the power of sport to unleash human potential, to overcome fear, to make yourself the best person you can be. Charles Schwab believed that when investing is done right, it liberates you to create your own destiny. And if you're looking at the B2B sector, Salesforce at their outset, and they still have this everywhere around their company if you ever get to visit one of their offices, they believe that the future belongs to the cloud. So these are beliefs much bigger than what they actually do, beliefs that can actually impact humanity. So obviously, Karen and I do not know your businesses. Joe talked to us a little bit about them beforehand. Clearly, they're across a wide range of sectors. And I personally worked, I think, across every sector you can imagine, and strange enough, enjoy what people call the boring sectors much more than the sexy fun sectors, because they're more challenging. But in each case, understanding what you do is obviously critical. If you can't put that out on a piece of paper, there's a real problem. But defining why you do it at a higher order, that's what gets people, as Karen said, excited. And they may disagree with you, and that's okay, but they'll still talk about you. Hopefully they'll go, that's a company I want to work with, a person I want to work with, because they believe in something which is important to my community or society or humanity. The higher order you can get that, up Maslow's motivational hierarchy, the better. Sometimes companies come up with beliefs which seem very generic, but if you claim that for your sector, for your category, then really good things happen. Let's talk about monsters. This is a strange thing to talk about, I know, in a business presentation, but a monster in challenger terminology is what you, as a person probably, as a business, fundamentally disagree with. It's what you fight against. And you do that on behalf of the people you seek or aspire to seek to serve. So you do that on behalf of a community. Dove, for instance, Dove soap fights against this concept of a beauty myth. Tesla fights against the carbon economy. So Karen's going to talk a little bit about what this is for Rebel and how we applied this through the business.
So our monster from the beginning was an unlevel playing field where one competitor was controlling everything in the cheerleading industry, and where only big gyms or ones that fawn to the industry, giant wolf, got halfway decent service. So back then, before we came into the cheerleading industry, the industry was dominated by one player who provided high quality service really only to the larger programs. They locked gyms into multi-year contracts through rebate schemes. There were a lot of late deliveries, no apologies, no refunds, no discounting when those types of things happened. That entity also provided judges at all the major competitions, provided all the board members to the governing body, and threatened a lot of the small players, including us, with legal action so that they could continue being a monopoly. Today, things are a lot different now that we are on the scene. We have forced our competitor to navigate by us, even though they are a $2.1 billion company. In the all-star competitive cheer space, they actually navigate by us now in terms of their design aesthetic, the way they market. And we have forced a lot of change in the industry because they had to compete with a lot of the changes that we brought to the table.
So shall I play this video, then you talk about it? Or do you
Sure.
So this is a video that was put out in 2016, I think, and Karen will talk about it in a second. But it absolutely faced that monster head on with no apologies. Can you talk about that, Karen? You're on mute.
Yeah. So I'll be honest with all of you guys. I was a little scared to put that out into the industry, run it as an advertisement on Facebook, Instagram, and because it basically called out Goliath's bad behavior, right? The uphill battle we have fought since I founded the company is people being afraid to order products from us because they feel like they can't win at a competition if they are not in the competitor's uniform. So if they were in a Rebel uniform, maybe they wouldn't win because the judges are all employed by the competitor. You know, the governing body is controlled by the competitor. So that video was really, again, a polarizing force saying, hey, you're going to either stand with us or stand against us. But the tagline became, when rebels come to your house, they wear what they want. And when we referred to your house, we meant the competitions, because 85% of the competitions in the industry are also owned by the competitor. So whereas we are an apparel company making cheerleading uniforms and accessories, the competitor we are up against makes cheerleading uniforms. They run the camps, they run the events, they run all things cheerleading. They don't do apparel. So this video, though, again, was another moment for us where people ended up championing us, and we ended up picking up more business from this video. So again, it was a risk, but it worked. And it kind of set the playing field up for the next few years of who we were going to be. I think we were very calculated in putting the image out there to the customer base of who we were and what we stood for.
And that's what all challengers do. They have to do it, because otherwise you just get lost in the sea of sameness. So if you look at Apple, they've challenged since their inception. Strange now because they dominate so much, but conformity, and that's what 1984 was all about. Nike have challenged lethargy, all those reasons we make up on a daily basis not to do any exercise. It's too hot, it's too cold, I'm too tired, it's too early, it's too late. You know, we make up these excuses. They push up and say, that's the monster stopping us all being better human beings. Charles Schwab with financial services challenged disengagement and disinterest. There's a great statistic that says people spend 10 times the amount of time planning for their vacation than they do planning for their retirement each year. That's crazy. So that's what they push up against. And Salesforce, again from the beginning, have challenged big, dumb software. Programs that take 2 years to implement, and by 6 months into that process, they're already out of date. Why is this important? Because a monster, something to push up against on behalf of your community. It's a battle cry, it's a cri de coeur, it's something to fight against. It can be incredibly motivational, as Karen said, not just for your employees and your partners, also for the industry. There's many places where people feel downtrodden, there's nobody on their side. From a business perspective, it provides real clarity. So if you focus on a monster, it allows you to say, I'm not going to do this, but we have to do this. And in the best instance, as Karen said with Rebel, it rallies partners and sometimes society on your behalf. So I'd encourage all of you, if you haven't already done this, to say, what's your monster? What threatens your community, the people you serve, whether that's 20 clients or 200,000 clients? And the bigger and fiercer you can paint this, the better. We all know every Hollywood movie does that. Darth Vader didn't wear a white cloak. He wore this mask and talked like this strange thing, dressed in black. That was a fierce monster. It was great because it set up the protagonist and antagonist in those stories. It has to be tangible, and you have to believe that, if not now, over time, you can actually defeat that monster. The other thing the third thing that challenges to every single one of them is to challenge the conventions of the category. And Karen's going to talk to you about really the founding story of how she set the business up to challenge everything that the competitor stood for.
I'm muted again. Okay, I'm unmuted now. The first year when I started the business, there was a guy here in Dallas that we wanted to partner with for some domestic manufacturing. And he said something to me to make me realize immediately that I could not work with this man. He said, Karen, you have to follow the market leader, because we were trying to lab dip the colors different. I was trying to do a lot of things different than them. And he came and said, you can't do that. The marketplace is used to this. It's been like this for 40 years. Your red has to match their red. Your royal blue has to match their royal blue. And he said, you got to follow the market leader. And that was the last meeting I ever had with him. Like, he just kind of fell off the map for me, because I knew that the only way we were ever going to surpass the market leader and give them a run for their money was to do things 180 degrees different than they had done them. You can't ever compete or surpass your competition if you're just copying their model, right? So when we first started out, we literally listed on a piece of paper all the things that the competitor did and how they did them, and drew a line and then put on the other side how we were going to do each of these things differently. Like, we identified it from the start. So, Julian, do you want me to read through this, or you want to show that? Oh, you already put it up. Okay.
So I put that up, but I thought, just we read that slide. This is such a great story about the lookbook.
Am I telling the lookbook story?
Yeah, go on. This is great.
Okay. All right. So we started in 2016. We were the first company to not put out a catalog in the chair and dance industry. We put out what's called a lookbook. And a catalog is, we knew that people wanted, I'll use this analogy. When you're a girl going to prom, you do not want to walk into the prom and see another girl in your dress, or another girl in your dress, but a different color version of your dress. That is devastating to any girl. Same for a cheerleading team, right? You don't want to walk into a competition and see 3 or 4 other teams there wearing the same thing you are. Well, that's how things generally played out before we came onto the scene. We knew that our customers wanted couture, which is one-off, not on a template. You know, they sketch it, they design what they visualize in their head, whatever their dream is. We make it happen. We sell it to them. We retire that. Nobody else ever wears it again. That's how we catapulted the business, is by saying no more catalogs. We're going to put out a lookbook, and everything in the lookbook is going to be inspirational. And you can say, I like this piece of the arm, or I'm inspired by this, so make my thing look like this. So we, every year since 2016, have traveled to a foreign country and taken a crew of anywhere from 35 to 50 people, because we take our own, you know, we take our models, obviously, and we take our own hair and makeup team, production crew, videographer, everything. And the year we started doing that, again, we saw a huge increase in business. It was just so out there and unheard of in our industry to go to a foreign country and shoot these really inspirational pieces. And yes, it's costly to do it, but it gives us a year's worth of content. And now everybody's, you know, especially in our industry, it's all young people. So they're on TikTok, they're on Instagram, they're on Snapchat. And so going on a trip like this, over a week, you collect so much content. You've got enough content to feed the social media content machine for a year, right? Something, again, the competitor doesn't have, because they're not going on, you know, foreign trips and taking 20 cheerleaders with them. And I'll let Julian talk a little bit about what we did during the pandemic. Looking back, it was insane, but we pulled it off. And what was a constraint ended up turning into an advantage. So I'll let him talk a little bit about that.
And I'm going to make this very brief, because I want to make sure that we get through this and allow time for conversation and questions at the end. But put simply, last April, May, we said, we're going to Greece, when pretty much every country said, we do not want Americans because they carry COVID. So the only way we got around that, and this was an aha moment at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm sure you've all had that, where we said, perhaps we could get invited to Greece by the Greek embassy. Stupid idea. We spoke to all 10 consulates around.
Americans were banned at the time, but we wanted to shoot in Greece, but Americans were banned. So we said, how are we going to get into a banned country? We took 47 people. And we knew the only way we were going to get to go into a banned country during a pandemic was to get an invitation from the Greek government. And that's what we got.
But as Karen said, what was interesting about this, and we often pose these as business problems. We say our ambition to shoot the best lookbook ever in Greece, in Santorini, an iconic destination. The constraint, we're not allowed in. We got permission, we got invitations from the Greek government, we went there. What we thought was going to be a good shoot was an epic shoot, because nobody else was allowed in. So
there was nobody there. We were literally the only people on the island. So it was like being on a Universal Studios movie set. And, you don't have to worry about people walking in your background, ruining your shot like every other country we've ever gone to shoot. I mean, it's really difficult to shoot because there's tourists everywhere. And we just had the whole island to ourselves. And we took 2 COVID tests before we got there. We got COVID tested when we got back, and everybody made it there in one piece, got back in one piece, COVID free. And the constraint led to a more beautiful result, which was a lookbook without all kinds of random people in the background that take hours to Photoshop out. We had beautiful photos with nobody disturbing our backgrounds.
What I want to go back to for a second before we move on is that this exercise of drawing a line and going, what does everybody else do? How do we do the opposite? Is so powerful for businesses, because it means that you, as the challenger, the smaller business, can actually start to redefine the expectations in a category. Now, clearly, there are some things that everybody has to do. If you're in financial services, you have to provide security and disclosures and so on. Those are not open to conversation. However, in financial services, an area I know fairly well, a lot of firms have lots of hidden fees. What's the opposite to a hidden fee? Total transparency. A lot of them require brokers. What's the opposite to that? Just an app. That's how Robinhood has become now, I think, the most popular broking service in the US. So we all know how long it takes supertankers to change direction. This is a wonderful shot from the Suez Canal, the Panama Canal, as you guys probably remember. being a small challenge and being nimble, you can change direction so quickly. You can force other people to follow you, even though they're much, much bigger. Let's talk about the hero's story for a second. Going back to Darth Vader and every Hollywood story like that, big, fierce monster, only one way they can be defeated is to have a hero just as heroic, just as fierce as the monster itself. In Challenger terminology, we call this the offer, and the offer has to be able to defeat the monster that you've identified. So Karen's going to talk for a second here about a little story which was still, again, one of those great stories about the rebel genesis, which really helped put us on the map, and what we thought was going to be a huge issue became a huge benefit.
Will you go to, oh, thank you. I was like, are you going to go to the next slide? In 2015, we were partnered with the largest independent cheerleading event producer. They were called Jam Brands, and they were our competitors' largest. The synergy was that we were the largest cheerleading uniform supplier, and they were the largest event producer that were not controlled by the competitor, Varsity Brands, right? And we had a partnership with Jam Brands that allowed us to get in front of our customers. We sponsored their winners' jackets. We were at every Jam Brands event, and we sponsored the winners with uniforms and all kinds of other goodies. And there was a great relationship there. And we didn't know it was going to happen. And I got a phone call, and Varsity purchased Jam Brands. And overnight, we were shut out of all the Jam Brands competitions that we were going to every single weekend to get in front of our customers. Deep down at that point, I didn't even say anything to Julian at the time. I thought I was going to lose my business because yes. I had a flawed belief at the time that we had to be partnered. We had to be inside of these venues to be able to get in front of our customers. And that was a flawed belief on my part. We literally called a meeting with, at the time, what was me and our exec team at the time was only 5 people, me and 4 other people. We went and sat at this little Mexican restaurant and said, okay, this is crisis mode. What are we going to do to get in front of our customers? Because the competitor now owns everything that we, everywhere we could possibly get in to talk to people, they're controlling it now. And we came up with this dream bus concept. And it came from actually my husband and his then partner from a brand consultancy called Eat Big Fish called me on the phone, and they said, hey, you guys should do what Kenneth Cole did when Kenneth Cole couldn't afford to get inside of the fashion shows, whatever, that used to happen in New York. So Julian, tell the Kenneth Cole story real quick, and then I'll tell what we did. Very quickly.
So Kenneth Cole, this is way before he is who he is now, up-and-coming fashion designer, wanted to be part of New York Fashion Week when it was in downtown Manhattan. Couldn't afford a booth. And a friend said, hey, I've got this big truck. You could repurpose this, one of those, huge container trucks, and make a showroom inside it really cheaply. And then you can show off your shoes and your clothes. And so Kenneth Cole said, oh, that's brilliant. And then he said, well, how the hell am I going to park a truck like that in Manhattan? You've all been to Manhattan, you know what it's like. And so he called up somebody in New York and said, under what conditions could I park a truck in Manhattan? And they said, well, if you're emergency services, if you are doing utility work, or if you are a film production company. So Kenneth Cole is actually Kenneth Cole Productions. That's how the company was founded. So they got a permit to make a film about New York Fashion Week. They parked their truck outside the exhibition center, and the rest is history.
So we did the same thing, and we actually set up a production company, and we got a film permit, and we knew that Varsity was going to roll into town with their biggest event, and we bought a trailer, and we gutted the inside, and I hired somebody to make it look like a girly dressing room on the inside, and we set up right across the street from them on the street, and we filmed a documentary, and the kids and the cheer moms, they came. And at the time, we only had one product to sell, and it was a backpack, a chair backpack called the Rebel Dream Bag. And we were just so excited that we had this one thing to sell, and people were coming, and we were getting to talk to the athletes and the parents, and the coaches had somewhere to come to do design sessions with us. And we were right across the street from the venue, so we had access even though we were outside. Cut to 5 years later, that Dream Bus concept has become a full-fledged retail division for us. We set up outside of competitors' events all the time now. We rent private lots. We are now in the Bank of America lot, every year. We have a deal now with Bank of America downtown. We set up a huge pop-up shop with a TikTok experience, unicorns, balloons, the whole thing. And what's even crazier is that had that whole Jam Brands buyout not happened, we wouldn't have a retail division. And our retail division is our fastest growing division of the company right now. And pre-pandemic, to me, it's still surreal because we would have never gone this route. So the worst thing possible in my mind happening to us it was like a lemons to lemonade moment, led to this division being launched. And now we have lines that start to form the night before, kids and their dads. It's a lot of dads standing in line overnight, but the lines start to form the night before at around 9 or 10 p.m. when we're building out the pop-up shops for the next day. The lines are hundreds long around the corner. It's still surreal for me to see because we never even intended to go into the retail business. And now we have people wait overnight to get in to buy our exclusive drop items. And the whole thing came to be because we were shut out of being inside of the cheer events.
Obviously, Karen, I love this story because of its genesis. I just wanted to flick back very quickly to talking about the monster and the offer for Rebel. So we talked about, the monster being inequality. So Rebel's offer was very simple, the opportunity for all. And we codified this with what we call the Rebel Guarantee, exceeding expectations at every level around service, design, quality, choice, and price. And it's sticking to that very simple offer with everything Rebel does in terms of how we interact with people, the products we create, how we create them, et cetera, that's really driven the success of the brand over the past 8 years or so. So looking at the brands we talked about, those big popular brands, for Apple, conformity is defeated by creativity. See how these two work together? They're the polar opposites of each other. Lethargy for Nike, inspiration, which is purely emotional. We all know the wonderful advertising Nike does, and innovation in terms of the product to make you feel like you're a better runner, better swimmer, better basketball player. Charles Schwab, disengagement and disinterest with very simple engagement and interest. And that's how they try and do all of their marketing, all their product and service development. And lastly, Salesforce, big dumb software with a nimble, smart cloud. All very simple and very obvious, but it's remarkably difficult, funnily enough, to actually create these when you go through strategy sessions or when you're sitting with your team. So the thing I would suggest is if you take this approach and you try and identify this monster to fight against, that you create an equally powerful offer that can actually defeat that. It has to be real. Generally, it should be a stretch. It should be a little uncomfortable. Your team will probably go, I'm not sure we can do that. Great. That's an opportunity to do the impossible. And critically, remember, you're fighting this monster on behalf of your customers and your community. So if it doesn't add value to them, it's probably not the right offer. Last thing we're going to talk about is walking the walk. I mean, we all know the old phrase that culture eats strategy for breakfast or strategy for lunch, depending on who you listen to. But one of the great advantages that all challengers have over their big stodgy incumbents is that they have a fire, a passion, a belief for why they're doing what they do. And that permeates them internally and externally. So Karen, do you want to talk about the persona we came up with and then tell a story about Maryland Twisters?
Sure. So we decide, part of our DNA and part of our culture, when anybody is hired or onboarded, they are told that, look, we are a company that, regardless of what obstacle is thrown at you, you're going to find a creative way to jump over that obstacle, dig a hole under it, drill through it. We just don't take no for an answer. And if you are somebody that is of weak constitution and are not comfortable getting a door slammed in your face and then kicking that door down, then this is not the place for you, right? So we start the conversation off that way with everybody that works for us. And our culture now is one where everybody knows if you get dealt lemons, you squeeze those lemons and you make lemonade. And we do that every single time. Earlier on in our history, in year one, where people in the cheer industry really didn't know who we were yet, but we were starting to pick up some customers, we did uniforms. You see this uniform here that says Rain on it. We did these uniforms for a prestigious team in Maryland, and we sponsored them. And we showed up at Cheerleading Worlds fully expecting them to show up on stage in our sponsored uniforms. What we didn't know is a competitor found out about it and knocked off our design, but did a bastardized version of it, right? It didn't even look at our level. It was just a cheaper version, but they had knocked off our design. And these kids came on stage wearing the knocked off design while we sat there in the audience. Until you felt something like that, man, that was just, it was a gut punch. And everybody was really, really mad about it. And at that point, I had a decision to make. Am I going to sit here and be mad about it and bitch and moan about it? Or are we going to do something about this, right? So when we got home, it was one of our sales reps at the time said, where are those uniforms, right? Because we hand carried the uniforms to the hotel in Orlando for the event. They never picked, the team never picked it up from us. And then they came on stage in the knocked off version made by the competitor. We still had the uniforms. And so we decided, well, we've got 20 uniforms. They're beautiful. Let's turn them into samples. So we created this particular uniform that you're looking at right now on the screen. We created a promotion around it where Rebel would take a lower profit margin on this and sell it at a price that every gym in America could afford. And we equipped, at the time, we only had 13 sales reps. We have 75 now, but at the time we had 13. So each sales rep got one of the uniforms that was never worn, never passed out to the athletes. And they would walk into the gym with this thing across their shoulder. And to make a long story short, we did over $1 million in sales that year just on this one design, just on this one. I think to date, there's never been another uniform design that we sold as many of as this one. And it created our promotion. We now have a promotional collection. Every year we put out a promotional collection of 5 or 6 designs that if you don't want to go the custom or couture route and you're willing to take a template that maybe say some other people may be wearing, we'll offer it to you at a promotional price. So the promotional line was born out of that lemons to lemonade situation. And the sales we did that year, it really juiced our sales because this design was so popular. And we saw knockoffs of it everywhere after that. So the competitor, as well as a lot of the mom and pop smaller cheer suppliers, they were all knocking off this design, which was super flattering because it's like, okay, that was a moment for us also where we knew we had shifted to forcing people to navigate by us, forcing people to navigate by our design aesthetic, because things didn't look like this before we came into the marketplace. They looked much simpler, and we kind of took it to another level and forced everybody else in the same business to take it to that level.
So this attitude, Mark Zuckerberg calls it, move fast and break things. You don't necessarily need to break things, but you certainly need to move fast and think on your feet and turn lemons into lemonade, is what all challengers do. Apple talk about them being audacious mavericks. It's the type of person they employ at Apple, the type of partnerships they look for. Nike talk about being inspirational and irreverent champions of sport. It's a very powerful attitude. Charles Schwab, formed by Chuck Schwab nearly 50 years ago, talk about being a people's champion, trying to democratize access to investing for everybody, no matter how rich or poor. In Salesforce, at the time, people said they were crazy. The future does not belong to the cloud. And they said, no, that's where we're heading. And they've always had this visionary attitude. So codifying your behavior and how you as a company do and want to operate is incredibly important. I'm more than happy to send out a very short PDF that talks about different stances and different ways you can do this, if that's helpful, Joe and team. But it means that you as a leader and as an executive team have to model that behavior. You have to demand it, as Karen said, internally, and reward it. The sort of behavior that you want in your company becomes what everybody expects from you. So just in summary, this is what challenges do. It's what Rebel has done since the outset, and I think Karen and I both believe firmly it's one of the reasons that business has been so successful. You're founded on a belief, a higher order belief. You find something to push up against. You defeat that with a really compelling offer, a hero story. You challenge appropriate conventions in your category, and you do things differently so that other people have to navigate by you versus the opposite. And then you walk the walk. So in summary, I think the thing we always remind ourselves is that followers never lead and leaders never follow. So we are open to questions, thoughts, comments. Obviously, we can't see you, so hopefully some of you are still awake at lunchtime. We haven't put you to sleep.
Well, Julian, Karen, thank you so much. That was fantastic. I got to see a preview of the slides, so I already knew they were going to be pretty, but the stories and the explanations are amazing. And I'm going to spare the audience any law school stories I have, Karen, and go straight to the Q&A session. There have been a handful of questions. I'm going to start with the two that I find most interesting. The first one's from Doug Thorpe. He said, did the name Rebel come at the start or as you grew the company and had the experiences that you described? The second question comes from Jack Workenthien. This is one I've asked Karen a few times. How many times have offers been made by either the competitor or others to buy Rebel, and how do you respond?
So first question, the name Rebel, yes, we came up with it at the very beginning. And I remember a lot of people said, don't use that name. It's, cheerleading, it's predominantly females. The name is too harsh and don't use it. And my uncle, this is so funny. He actually said, don't use it because he said, you're never going to come up in the search engines because University of Las Vegas Rebels. And we're higher than them in the search engines. They don't come up. We do. So I don't know. I think we got lucky and it was a little bit fate that we came up with that name, but we had a short list of 5 or 6 names on a piece of paper and we decided to go with Rebel because it's one of those few words in the English dictionary that is a noun, a verb, and an adjective. It can be used in many ways. And you can do lots of spins and puns with the word rebel, rebellious, to be a rebel. So we got lucky with that one. Second question, yes. We've got people banging down our door, including the competitor who has reached out on 2 separate occasions. I have promised my employees and promised myself that I will never sell this business to the competitor. There are plenty of VCs and private equity out there that would be very interested in this business when the time is right. And they would take the business to another level, as opposed to if I sold to the competitor, they may pay me above market value, but they would be doing that as a strategic move to shut us down. I care a lot about our employees, and a lot of them are ex-cheerleaders, and they're very passionate about the industry. They love what they do. And it's important to me that regardless of what happens in the future, that they still have a job. So this business really is my baby and my legacy. So I'm not the type of person to, cash this out or go after where the most money is and see my business get shut down or run into the ground. I would much rather approach it from a manner where I could be still somewhat in control of it in the future. And I don't think I'm going to be looking for an exit anytime soon. People say I'm crazy to not do that, but I'm personally invested in this business and it's become part of my identity. It's helped me grow as a human being.
So I have a few questions. The first one is, I think I've asked you this a little bit and you told me a little bit about it and you kind of hinted at it about the Santorini photo shoot. My understanding is you guys did really well during the pandemic. And I would love for you to explain, because not everybody did,
Sure.
but I'd love for you to explain not only just the photo shoot story, because that's a great story in of itself, to create the look that you wanted, but also how you turned the pandemic into an opportunity to increase revenue.
Sure. So I probably have it easier than a lot of people during the pandemic, just because I don't answer to a board. I don't have investors. I grew this company on my own slowly, and I make all the decisions. Like, the decisions stop at me, right? So when the pandemic hit, I wrongfully thought it was going to last maybe 90 days, 120 days, because I saw what was happening in China at our factory, because COVID was really bad in China for about 60 days. And then everything opened back up. Our factory was open. People weren't wearing masks anymore. They were gathering again, going to concerts. So looking at what was happening there, in my mind, I was like, okay, this is a 60 to 90 day thing. So I decided, look, I have only taken a distribution once since I started this company, although we have been profitable every single year since year one, including the COVID year last year. And that helped me in that we operate off our own cash reserves. We do not carry any debt. So being a leader of a company going into COVID, knowing we don't have any debt, we can operate off our own cash reserves. I got on a Zoom call with the entire company, and I said, they were scared. Okay. And they said, are you going to lay people off? Are we going to get furloughed? What's going to happen? Because our competitor, it was like the Hunger Games over there. Every Friday they were laying off. I'm serious. It was literally like the Hunger Games. We were calling it like it's Friday, Hunger Games time, And so our employees saw that happening at our competitor, and they were like, what's going to happen? And I just told them, I said, look, nobody's getting laid off. Nobody's getting furloughed. Nobody's having their pay cut. We are going to ride this thing out. That's it. We're going to ride it out. If it's 90 days, if it's a year, I'm going to carry the payroll, and you guys need to get out there and hustle, right? Because for every account you have that's open, you've got another school in a state that's closed, and you got to go make up that business. What I saw happen was a level of loyalty from my employees that I have not seen. And I think of course, there's outliers, but the majority of them, I think last year worked harder than they have ever worked. People that didn't like cold calling started blowing up the phones. And we knew we had a target, a number we had to get to. And did we get to the number, the pre-COVID number? No, we didn't. But did we still grow, and were we still profitable? I mean, we weren't super profitable. We were profitable by the skin of our teeth, but how many businesses can say they were profitable during COVID, right? So I think that once I let the team know, look, you're going to get a paycheck through this whole thing. It changed their mentality on how they approached treating the business and how many hours they were going to work. Another thing is, I think I decided to double down, and this was Julian's idea, because I'm not going to sit here and say I wasn't scared when COVID hit. I was. I think any business owner, in that situation would be scared. And I asked him, I said, hey, Varsity's laying people off. They're laying some good people off. And he said, hire them during COVID. It's like, I'm trying to hold on to every penny we can, because I don't know how long this thing's going to last. And he said, hire them. We hired 5 people away from our competitor during COVID. So we did double down. And those people now, it's a setup for 2021 and 2022. They're adding to the pipeline. So I think that some of the moves that we made last year and some of the new people we brought onto the team, we may not be seeing an immediate benefit from them. But I think when the world gets completely back to normal, it's going to juice our sales and our growth through the roof. We moved to a remote model during COVID, and it worked for us. We've got a lot of millennials and Gen Z working for us, a lot of really young people, and they were very fearful of COVID, and they did not want to come to work, or either they didn't want to come to work or they were using COVID as an excuse to not come to work. I don't know. But we moved everybody to remote, and everybody, I was very concerned about productivity, but it wasn't an issue. And we're still remote. We're still remote right now. I don't think we're going back to trying to integrate people back into the office until June.
June the 1st.
June 1st.
Nice. We've got a couple more questions, but I think I'm going to I don't want to go too much over our time. One of the questions, let me see. All right, we'll answer these questions. One of the questions is, you made a lot of lemonade, but what about just straight up dry lemons or failures? My guess is, knowing you, I don't think you consider anything a true failure. The next question is, the key to your offer is design. What have you done to build it into a unique strength? And what steps do you take to stay in touch with your customer needs and tastes? And then I'm going to shut the questions down.
Okay. Failures. Yeah, we've had some failures. True failures. I mean, your people are everything, right? So I have made the mistake of misjudging people's character or hiring the wrong people, right? And those situations turned into bad situations, and people had to be let go. So another failure we had was, this was probably 2016. We put out a practice wear lookbook, and our pricing was not in tune with what the industry wanted. Again, we were able to turn that around, though, because everybody worked all weekend long and revamped everything. And so Thursday, the week before, we had put out this catalog and gotten huge pushback from many of our customers in the industry saying, your pricing's not right, it's too high, et cetera, these items. We spent 72 hours, and on Monday evening of the next week, we relaunched a new lookbook with new pricing. And that's what you can do when you're small and agile and nimble, and you've got a small team that's willing to work all weekend and all throughout the night, sleep at the office. Our costing girl in the early years, I would come in the morning and I'm like, you're here so early. And she would say, oh no, I never left. She's like, I'm going to go home at noon and take a shower and come back. It's those type of people that regardless of what the mistake is, you figure out a way to turn it around and move on. Julian, can you think of any other failures where we didn't do something to fix it?
I think the vast majority of things, I'll just take 30 seconds here to say that obviously there are huge failures that companies can have. We've seen them in the press. Most failures are only failures if you don't learn from them. And I know that sounds like such a cliche, but at Charles Schwab, one of the most conservative places I've ever worked at or with, we instigated this thing in marketing, and marketing is not investing millions of dollars. It's hundreds of thousands usually. We called it a wall of fail. And my CMO looked at me and said, are you insane? Like more insane than normal? And I said, no, we need to celebrate the failures because they're not life and death. If we learn from them and celebrate them and do it better next time, then they've been worth every penny we spent on them. So I think that's pretty much how Rebel.
I actually tell our executive team, you guys need to take risk. You need to take calculated risks. You need to come up with big ideas. And if you fail, it's okay. I got your back. And we have to operate that way. They're not afraid to fail. And that's why they continue to innovate. In bigger companies, people are afraid to fail and lose their jobs. And I tell my people, you are only going to earn your keep if you push, if you come up with the crazy ideas, and we try them. And so it's a culture of crazy. I mean, our VP marketing says, she's like, Karen, you're just enough crazy to still run a stable organization. Like, you're right on the borderline of being too crazy, and I take that as a compliment, because we wouldn't be where we are today if we didn't take those all of us didn't take risks. There was a second question. I forgot what it was.
Yeah, the next two questions are just about your design and how you stay in touch with your customers. Basically, how you made the business work.
Design. So we hired real fashion designers. We fit things on real models. So we set up the business very different to the way our competition is set up. In that we run it like a fashion company that happens to make cheerleading uniforms. So everything about the way our internal operation is set up is as if we were a fashion brand. And cheerleading uniforms is a product. And so when you employ skilled fashion designers that have fashion design degrees, and you tell them it's okay to do whatever you want, as opposed to saying, you stay in these boxes, do this because it's easier to manufacture. I mean, I'm sure we drop our factory to their knees daily because we're forcing them to do things. And I do get calls and they scream and yell and they're like, this is ridiculous. This is impossible. I'm like, try it, try to make it, try 4 times, try 5 times. It's that type of push that has now become our culture, and they don't call back and complain as much anymore. But every year we're having to level up, Joe, because the other brands out there, they chase us now. Whatever we put out this year, they're knocking it off, some version of it next year. They're knocking off a neckline. They're knocking off a crystal mold. I now have, when I get on Instagram or I get on TikTok and I see videos, if I can't see our mark on a uniform, I'll actually send it to our VP of design and be like, is this ours or is this somebody else's? And he'll say, this is getting scary that we can't tell our stuff because everybody's knocking it off, you know? So they know they got to level up every year, and we light that fire under them. What was the other question after design?
Just how you keep in touch with customers?
We've got a great sales team, and we have a 24-hour rule. You know, it's listed in our customer charter. It's printed on the wall. It's printed in every lookbook we put out. And it says, we will respond to your request in 24 hours and we'll never be too big to forget that. So even I, to this day, which I probably shouldn't because I run myself into the ground, I don't care if it's a $4,000 a year customer or a $500,000 a year customer. If they reach out to me personally, they will get a response from me. And at some point that's going to become unmanageable with, 4,000 or 5,000 customers. But right now we still try to give that boutique level of service.
So I'm going to finish up. Thank you. I'm going to, actually the more qualified person is going to take over the slide. So you have your assistant and I have mine. We jokingly during our practice run, Karen referred to Julian as her assistant. I refer to him as her advisor, but
I think assistant's most important.
But my significant other also refers to me as her assistant. So a couple announcements to make. Our next education series is about why every business should have a multi-year business plan. It will be next week on Wednesday, and you can sign up on our website, www.silverfox.org. Our next speaker for Lunch and Learn next month is going to be Tyson Volkl. He's the president of the Texas A&M Foundation. He leads a team of about 160 professionals dedicated to philanthropy who match donor passions to Texas A&M. I am not an alum. In fact, I am a proud alum of the Challenger / competitor / University of Texas. So despite that, I am supporting Mr. Volkl's presentation. He served as a U.S. Army infantry officer in Europe, the U.S. and the Middle East, and he continues to serve as a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve. For those of you that have been diligent enough to hang with us till the end, we've got a set of polling questions and survey questions. If you don't mind completing those, thank you very much. I think they're going to be put on the screen, but if they're not, feel free to answer the survey questions that you should get by email. And with that, I want to thank again Karen and Julian. Oh, there's the survey questions, the polling questions. And by the way, Julian, you and Karen can't answer the polling questions. So, but thank you again for your time. I can't thank you guys enough. I know this took a lot of time out of your schedule, and I really appreciate the presentation. It was outstanding. Somebody just commented that it was the best event that he's seen coming from our organization. So, and Jack's a tough critic. So,
thank you for having us. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It was very, very educational. So I hope everybody has a wonderful day and a wonderful weekend. And again, I look forward to keeping in touch with you and Julian and Karen. And thank you again for supporting the Silver Fox Advisors.
Bye, guys.
Have a good week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.